Matrix transformation begins in Season 8's first episode when Rick punishes Summer and Morty by trapping them in a simulation for stealing his phone charger. What starts as a quick lesson turns into Summer's origin story as a potential supervillain when Rick falls asleep and accidentally leaves them there for 17 years of virtual time. While Morty just lived a random life in the simulation like a typical Roy game experience, Summer stayed completely aware that none of it was real. She didn't just survive those 17 years, she dominated them completely. Summer became a successful tech CEO, built a wireless charging empire, and orchestrated an entire war just to escape the simulation, using her own brother as a weapon. The most disturbing detail is that she openly admits she planned the entire war Morty fought in, and watched him die repeatedly while building her business empire. She treated her own brother like a video game character she could respawn for her battles. Morty developed severe PTSD and trauma, watching his best friend CJ die, all while Summer pulled the strings behind the scenes. What makes this different from typical Rick and Morty adventures is Summer's level of strategic control. Unlike Rick and Morty's usual Roy game experiences where they live random lives and go with the flow, Summer was playing 4D chess the entire time. She manipulated virtual politics, staged terrorist attacks, controlled global economics, and maintained perfect emotional detachment throughout the process. This shows psychological compartmentalization way beyond what you'd expect from a teenager. Critics from Bleeding Cool pointed out the psychological horror. Morty is living his life dying over and over again, playing out in front of everyone. And yet, Rick seems happy with the improvement in Morty. This reveals something terrifying about Summer's personality. She can watch family members suffer while executing long-term strategic plans without any emotional interference whatsoever. The proof of Summer's transformation comes after Rick erases her Matrix memories. She watches a video message from her adult self, but deliberately chooses to ignore it. She's unconsciously rejecting the idea of going back to being a normal teenager because she's evolved beyond that point. The 17-year experience fundamentally changed how her brain works, giving her adult-level strategic thinking and emotional control while everyone still sees her as just Rick's granddaughter. Family manipulation became Summer's secret superpower after the simulation, and she immediately started using psychological warfare against her own family with surgical precision. The key difference between Summer and other characters is that she understands emotions aren't weaknesses to be overcome. They're powerful weapons to be strategically deployed. Take the episode where Summer destroys Rick's romantic relationship with Daphne by literally blowing up a comet that was about to hit Earth. This wasn't a teenage tantrum. It was calculated psychological warfare designed to prove a philosophical point. Rick himself admits, "It was pretty Rick of you to avert an apocalypse just to destroy one dumb relationship." Summer used Rick's own nihilistic philosophy against him, proving love is meaningless through destructive action rather than argument. Summer's most effective manipulation targets Rick's biggest psychological weakness, his unresolved trauma over losing Diane. Season 6 reveals that Summer unconsciously reminds Rick of his dead wife, creating a massive emotional blind spot that Summer can exploit without Rick realizing it's happening. She has figured out how to trigger Rick's grief and protective instincts through her behavior and personality. What makes Summer's manipulation style terrifyingly effective is her complete opposite approach from Rick's typical methods. Where Rick uses fear, intimidation, and intellectual superiority to control people, Summer weaponizes love, guilt, family loyalty, and emotional connection. Her psychological attacks feel like they come from genuine emotion and family concern, making them almost impossible to defend against because you can't tell when she's being sincere versus playing mind games. When Summer guilt trips Rick by saying, "At least the devil has a job, at least he's active in the community," what do? "You eat our food and make gadgets." It hits harder than any of Rick's scientific put-downs because it targets his deep insecurities about being useful to his family. Summer has identified that Rick's greatest fear isn't death or failure, it's being useless to the people he cares about. Summer's competitive relationship with Morty reveals her strategic nature. She positions herself to win Rick's approval by exploiting Morty's insecurities and playing to Rick's preferences for competent partners. She's turned family dynamics into a chess game where she's always thinking 3 moves ahead. The Rick and Morty wiki describes Summer as a sociopathic and narcissistic person, like her grandfather. People expect Rick to be manipulative because he's obviously a sociopath, but nobody suspects Summer because she looks like a normal teenager dealing with normal family issues. The most chilling aspect of Summer's psychological warfare is how she exploits family bonds and trust against her targets. She can make Rick, Morty, or her parents do exactly what she wants while making them think it was their own decision. This level of emotional manipulation combined with her Matrix-enhanced strategic thinking makes her potentially more dangerous than Rick has ever been, because she can destroy people from the inside out rather than just threatening them with science weapons. Morty's exploitation shows up most clearly when you compare how Summer and Morty handle high-pressure situations, and the difference is absolutely shocking. While Morty typically panics, tries to help everyone, and gets overwhelmed by moral complexity, Summer stays ice-cold and focused on achieving victory. The Season 8 Matrix episode provides the most dramatic example of this power dynamic. While Morty experiences years of traumatic military service, develops severe PTSD from repeatedly dying in combat, and watches his closest friends get killed, Summer orchestrates his entire experience like she's directing a war movie. She manipulates his emotions, exploits his loyalty, and treats him like a strategic resource rather than a family member deserving protection. The psychological implications are terrifying. Summer can watch Morty experience genuine trauma without it affecting her strategic planning or decision-making process. That level of emotional compartmentalization isn't just unusual for a teenager. This pattern of dominance appears consistently throughout the series. In Rick, a Mort Well-Lived, while Morty gets scattered across different Roy game NPCs and falls apart under pressure, Summer takes charge as a natural-born leader. She reads the terrorist leader's book, studies their tactics, uses die-hard strategies, and successfully saves everyone while Morty struggles to maintain his identity. Summer's ruthless efficiency in virtual scenarios demonstrates strategic thinking that completely surpasses Morty's empathetic but often ineffective approach. While Morty tries to save everyone and gets paralyzed by moral complexity, Summer makes hard choices quickly and executes them perfectly, even when involving massive collateral damage. Digital Spy Analysis pointed out that Season 6 introduced an Evil Morty-style twist for Summer, suggesting her patterns of psychological dominance parallel Evil Morty's strategic manipulation techniques, but with one crucial difference. Evil Morty had to escape the family structure to become dangerous, while Summer executes her manipulation from within the family system. Summer has evolved past the point where normal family bonds limit her decision-making capabilities. She can genuinely love Morty as her brother while simultaneously using him as a tool to achieve strategic objectives. This psychological flexibility makes her far more dangerous than someone who simply doesn't care about family at all, because she can exploit family relationships without being constrained by them. Rick's blindness is that he completely underestimates Summer's true capabilities and potential threat level because she unconsciously reminds him of Diane, his dead wife, and this emotional connection creates Rick's biggest psychological blind spot. This isn't just family affection, it's a critical vulnerability that Summer can exploit without Rick even realizing what's happening. Season 6 analysis reveals that Rick has admitted Summer reminds him of Diane, which explains why he treats Summer differently from other family members. When Rick looks at Summer, he's seeing echoes of the woman he loved and lost, which triggers protective instincts and prevents him from recognizing potential threats. This creates perfect psychological camouflage for Summer's manipulative behavior. The genius of Summer's approach is that she doesn't challenge Rick directly like Evil Morty did with his dramatic Citadel escape. Instead, Summer works within the existing family system, making herself indispensable while gradually gaining influence. Rick's scientific genius works against him here because he's trained to recognize external technological threats. Rick assumes Summer operates from genuine teenage emotions when she's actually playing psychological chess several moves ahead. When Summer manipulates him through guilt, shame, or emotional appeals, Rick interprets it as normal granddaughter behavior rather than strategic warfare designed to achieve specific objectives. He sees a family member needing guidance, not a potential rival systematically studying his weaknesses. Summer has figured out that Rick's fundamental assumption about family being inherently safe is his greatest vulnerability. Rick would never expect a serious threat from inside his support system, giving Summer perfect cover for long-term manipulation strategies. She's using Rick's emotional trauma and family bonds as psychological camouflage. The Mary Sue analysis points out something crucial. Summer is the only character on the show who fully understands the risks and beauties in the multiverse. She is unfazed by her grandfather's intelligence and doesn't take his word as gospel in every situation. This unfazed attitude allows Summer to manipulate Rick in ways other family members cannot, because she doesn't suffer from the intimidation factor that typically gives Rick psychological dominance. Rick consistently fails to recognize that Summer combines his strategic intelligence with superior emotional awareness and social manipulation skills. His scientific background creates a blind spot when it comes to recognizing emotional intelligence as legitimate power, and Summer has mastered these skills through her extended virtual reality experience. This makes Summer potentially more dangerous than any external enemy Rick has faced, because she's the one threat he literally cannot see coming. His emotional connection to Diane and assumptions about family loyalty prevent him from recognizing that Summer might be using those same connections as weapons against him. By the time Rick realizes what's happening, Summer will have already established herself as an equal or superior force within the family power structure. Summer's ascension has been happening gradually across multiple seasons, with Summer systematically replacing other family members in key roles and positioning herself as Rick's logical successor while maintaining the appearance of normal family development. This isn't just character growth, it's a calculated power consolidation strategy that's been building for years. The most dramatic example is the Night Family episode, where Summer leads a full revolution against the conscious family as the supreme commander of everyone's subconscious selves. This episode shows Summer's natural leadership abilities when given actual authority. She doesn't just participate in the rebellion, she becomes the strategic mastermind who organizes and directs the entire operation. Summer systematically establishes herself as the family's most reliable crisis manager. In Solarix, she creates wormholes for spacecraft escapes, kills entire waves of alien attackers, and ultimately saves the day when Beth and Space Beth get distracted by personal drama. This pattern gives her increasing authority over major family decisions through demonstrated competence rather than inherited authority. By Season 8, the power shift becomes undeniable. Summer has essentially replaced Morty as Rick's primary adventure companion and partner. This represents a fundamental shift in family dynamics, where Summer has positioned herself as Rick's equal rather than his subordinate. She's no longer asking for permission, she's making executive decisions and expecting others to follow her lead. Spencer Grammer has openly discussed this evolution. "I really want her to become more and more like Rick." This suggests deliberate creative development towards Summer matching and eventually surpassing Rick's family influence. The transformation isn't accidental. It's planned character development designed to set up future conflicts. What makes Summer's approach brilliant is that instead of challenging Rick through direct confrontation, she makes herself indispensable while gradually absorbing his responsibilities and decision-making power, naturally eroding Rick's position as the family's primary problem solver. Summer's power consolidation operates on much longer timescales than Rick typically considers. While Rick focuses on immediate scientific challenges or current crises, Summer executes a multi-season strategy for gaining family influence, showing remarkable patience and strategic foresight beyond typical teenage capabilities. The long-term implications are staggering. Summer is building her own power base using Rick's methods but with superior emotional intelligence and social manipulation skills. She's creating a situation where challenging her authority would require Rick to destroy his own family structure, making her position nearly impossible to attack directly. Villain arc setup throughout Season 8 strategically positioned Summer's potential villain arc through subtle character moments that demonstrate her growing independence, sophisticated manipulation skills, and Rick-like moral flexibility while maintaining plausible deniability about her true intentions. Summer of All Fears serves as her official villain origin story, revealing the most disturbing aspect of Summer's transformation. She feels absolutely zero remorse about traumatizing Morty, despite knowing exactly how much psychological damage she caused. The episode reveals Summer's calculated deception and strategic thinking on a massive scale, staging terrorist attacks, manipulating global politics, orchestrating international conflicts, and sacrificing countless lives for strategic objectives without emotional interference or moral hesitation. What makes this setup particularly effective is the post-memory wipe behavioral analysis. Even after Rick erases all of Summer's Matrix memories, she unconsciously resists returning to her previous teenage mindset, suggesting that the psychological changes from her 17-year experience have fundamentally altered her personality at a deeper level that transcends memory manipulation. Season 8 operates through systematic psychological foundation building that establishes Summer's growing impatience with Rick's authority through subtle eye rolls during his explanations, strategic silences when she could provide helpful information, and deliberate moments where she withholds knowledge that could resolve conflicts. These behavioral patterns establish calculated non-cooperation that could evolve into active opposition. Most significantly, Season 8 introduces situations where Summer possesses knowledge or capabilities that Rick doesn't realize she has, setting up future scenarios where his chronic underestimation could become a critical vulnerability. Unlike Evil Morty, who had to escape the family dynamic, Summer operates from within it, making her impossible for Rick to abandon or eliminate without destroying his support system. Spencer Grammer's interviews provide official support for Evil Summer theories. Is there potentially a Citadel of Summers? Is there an Evil Summer? We've seen an Evil Summer in the Night Family episode, but is there one who's actually there? Even Summer herself mentioned summoning a Summer Battalion to crumble the intergalactic patriarchy in Season 7, which fans interpret as foreshadowing coordinated villain development across multiple dimensions. CBR analysis suggests all signs point to a lot of death and destruction, with this Evil Summer more likely to succeed than Weird Rick or Evil Morty. Her 17-year psychological advantage means she's playing a longer strategic game than any previous villain, with manipulation strategies spanning multiple seasons. The setup suggests Summer could become everything Rick fears about himself: brilliant, manipulative, emotionally disconnected, while remaining someone he cannot defeat through traditional means, because destroying her would require destroying his entire emotional support system. Slash Film Analysis emphasizes, multiple times throughout this episode, it's strongly implied that this ruthless night Summer has always existed inside of our Summer, suggesting her villain potential isn't new development, but the emergence of capabilities that were always present beneath the surface.